I know for many in this room, some of the slides that I'll be referring to will be kind of a review of what we discussed over the last 18 months. But I think it's very important to remind not only the audience in this room, but those watching, as well as the employees of this organization, the challenges that we've been facing or trying to address over the past 18 months and what we're going to do currently in the years ahead. And I think it's so important when we talk about, oops, we lost. And there we go. Okay. So I think it's really important to begin the discussion of Benicia's challenge by highlighting the why. Often when engaging members of the community, there is this confusion on how in the world can Benicia, the most affluent community in Solano County, anchored by an oil refinery, be in need of revenue. And I think it's important for us to kind of remind ourselves, and for those that are tuning in for the first time, truly an understanding of Benicia's economy. And I don't think we have to really think, for those of us that live here, too far to understand that there's not a lot of retail opportunity in Benicia. In fact, 63% of all of our sales tax revenue comes from the industrial park, and of that, very few businesses. So we have approximately 500 businesses in our industrial park. We have fewer than 20 that are generating anything of significant sales tax. And these are businesses that are creating, large pieces of equipment, primarily selling it to an end user. Those types of businesses are coveted by every city in California, and they are very rare. The vast majority of the inventory in our industrial park is warehouse, and it produces little tax and fewer jobs. When we think about our most robust area of economic activity, it is downtown Benicia, in particular First Street, and yet it only represents 7% of all the sales tax generated in Benicia, and the vast majority of that is from our eateries. When we look further, we note that Benicia is blessed with a lot of open space, over 2,000 acres of open space for which we cannot put anything on. And as I commented last year, the only thing people want on that open space is goats, and that costs the city money to have those goats. We know that over the past 13 years, we've only seen 126 units of housing built in this community, and only 4 commercial buildings built in that time span. We're not growing our economy, and we haven't done so for a better part of a generation. Every city in California's primary source of revenue is property tax. In Benicia, that is even more pronounced after having reviewed the slides that we just saw, that we have a limited retail economy. So then we have to rely even more so on the revenue derived by property tax. And much of that revenue is suppressed from $1990. As indicated in this slide, 41% of all of our residential homes have not been transferred in more than 35 years. And when you bring it up to 2000, it's over 60%. We're also seeing an aging population and a decline in population. All of these are having an issue on our ability to grow as an economy to keep pace with the cost of providing services. So that is the why, trying to understand for Benicia, why is it that we are in this situation? So then what is the challenge? The challenge with limited financial resources is trying to keep up with the expenditures. And oftentimes, we hear, and certainly in today, this idea that we are either mismanaging money or spending it. The reality is the money that we receive is being invested in the services that we care most about. And it is true that the vast majority of the dollars that we are spending are put into the people that are providing those services, because it is people, the city employees of this organization, that are providing the services when a water line breaks, when 911 is called, that you have someone to answer the phone. And in this city, you have somebody to respond to it. That we have people to manage our 28 parks, more than twice the national average. So these are where those dollars are going, and these are where the revenue that it's coming from. And as I've highlighted in every public presentation that I do, I draw people's attention to the largest slide on the largest side on the general fund side, and that is property tax. That is $21 million. If we go back, and again, this is something that's a reminder for many people that have seen this presentation before, if you do quick math, you can see that the combination of police and fire will exceed what we receive for all of our property tax, and that includes the money that we receive from Valero. So it puts in perspective this dilemma that Benicia is facing. And it is a dilemma that is not new. We have been facing this for quite some time. And as we move on, for many years, we have seen a graph very much like this. In fact, actually, this is the best graph we've seen in a really long time. What are we looking at? We're looking outwards to the 5-year forecast, and this is up to date. This includes the projected revenue that we will receive from measures A and B, and it also builds in the recent employee agreements for the next 2 years. And as we look out in 5 years, we see that we again begin to separate, that our expenditures continue to outpace revenue. But I want to make a point here. We're talking a difference of about $2 million. Now, in the grand scheme of things of our budget, when you have what will be, 120 data points of dollars coming in and dollars coming out, $2 million is really narrow, and we could easily see a $2 million surplus or a $2 million deficit. So we have made great progress. However, the point is we still are at an issue where we have not been able to fully adjust for the out years and being able to provide services into the future. And so I want to take a snapshot in time between what we are doing today in 2024 versus what we did in 2014 after the passage of Measure C. When we, at that year, went to the community and said, we're asking you for your support for that 1-cent sales tax measure to support Benicia's quality of life measure to maintain all of these services. And when we have additional revenue each year from Measure C, we will invest it into our roads, into our facilities, into our equipment. And for 3 budget cycles, we did that until all of the proceeds had to be used for service and operation. What we failed to do in 2014 was address the long term and start doing things a little bit differently, continuing to seek additional revenue, reducing our costs because we knew that in the future we would not be able to pay for the services that we have today. And so this game that we have been playing has created this chart. $225 million in deferred capital needs. This is for our parks, our roads, our city-owned facilities, and the buildings in which we operate our services. $225 million. Now, how could we have let this happen? You'll recall that just a few weeks ago, our Public Works Department provided an update on the condition of our roads. And it was, in fact, 25 years ago in 1999 that our roads were in a very good condition. Our pavement condition index was 72. And in some ways, it really does highlight what Benicia has done over the last 25 years. We have prided ourselves in the services that we can provide our community. And we have artificially kind of kept them up when we got out of the 1990s and we stopped growing. We didn't stop the service level that we were providing at that time. And so what we did is we delayed or we deferred the investment that we needed to make into our capital in order to continue to provide the services to our community. And there would be some years where we wouldn't have complete occupancy with our employees, and we would budget and we would have some surplus in one year, and we would use that to carry over to pay for the future deficit in the future years. And we did this over and over and over again. And as I noted last year, we have reached the point where we have exhausted our ability to do that, and we have rung up a very large deferred maintenance bill. Sometimes when we think of $225 million, it's so large of a number we cannot wrap our hand around it. So let's take a moment to wrap our head around some of these pictures. Many of our roads are in this condition. The roads are so poor that we don't have the revenue to address the roads that are in the worst condition. We can only invest and take care of the roads in the best condition, because to not take care of the good roads would create a cycle of doom where we would not be able to keep up with any of our roads and they would all go into disrepair. For anyone that has visited our sports field, at times you have visited a barren desert and other times a swamp. At Benicia Community Park alone, we have had over 23 water line breaks in that park since January. All told, in the first 10 months of this year, we have had over 41 breaks in our irrigation lines, delaying the ability for our community to use those fields and drawing resources away from taking care of other needs because we're constantly dispatching to address these needs. Then we have the facilities in which we work, and exampled here are just part of our police department and the delay that we have failed to put in that investment to our buildings. That is what $225 million of deferred maintenance looks like. So how are we going to fix it? And I can tell you, as a long-term resident of Benicia and a long-term city employee, and I think everybody in this room, this council included, and every member of staff, and I would probably assume members of the audience, we are tired of things being broken. And it is my job as a city manager to put forward a perspective and a plan to fix it. And as I have said before, this is not rocket science and this is not complex, but it is difficult. What we are proposing and what we have put in motion is 3 pillars of cutting costs, seeking local investment, which is taxes, and facilitating smart development within our community. And let's look at what we have done. I know there is great discussion currently in the present day with 3 ballot measures, 2 of them focusing on taxes and the other one related to a tax. Having only a few months ago passed a few taxes, that is the only thing we are doing to solve our problem. And I can say there are moments when sometimes hearing that narrative, it becomes a little bit disheartening because we fail to realize the sacrifice that we have put forward over these past 18 months. We have seen the largest reduction in city staff in more than 20 years. Our department structure of the city of Benicia is different than it has been for more than 40 years. We no longer have a Department of Library or a Parks and Community Services department. Our situation necessitated the combination of those 2 departments. It necessitated removing 10 people from our employee count, to adopting a policy of a vacancy factor, which means that on any given month we have 10 fewer people working in the city of Benicia because we need to capture the salary savings for not hiring that position. In addition, we have cut more than $3 million from programs and services that we have provided the community, all to kind of hold our head above water as we navigate the challenges before us. And make no mistake, we are being triaged for the last 18 months. We were facing a $6.5 million structural deficit, in addition to a $1 million deficit in the fiscal year that closed 18 months ago. And so we have done, this community has come together. We've had outside groups pick up the responsibility of organizing and paying for community events that we hold most dear, whether it is our 4th of July celebrations or lighting the Christmas tree in the first Friday of December. We have seen volunteers come out to aid our park staff in trying to maintain our parks. And we have noted that not only the work that has occurred, it's not the stop, but a continued effort over the next 5 years to continue to reduce what is the greatest expense in the city of Benicia, and that is people. And I want to take a moment and talk about what is going to be required in the future. There is no way that we can continue to reduce our operations without impacting the degree and method of service delivery. So, as I've noted before, these are 3 pillars. We're trying to put forward an approach where each one of these pillars kind of holds up their fair share, that is balanced. Each time we remove a pillar or take away kind of the burden that that has to carry, it requires greater weight for the remaining pillar or 2 pillars. And so it's important that we continue to reduce our costs when we look ahead at service. And before I go into talking about that, I also want to make a point. It's not only taking the action of reducing costs, it's putting in policy that will prepare us to address those issues. And it was not that long ago, just in April of 2022, when the council adopted a new reserve policy. And what you can see up here is anytime that we close out a budget and there is surplus, it automatically, those funds get deposited in these various accounts or funds. The vast majority of it is for capital maintenance projects. So if the council or a future council wanted to use those dollars for some other need, it would require a supermajority of a 4/5 vote. We've put in the policy. We've begun to take action, and we're now doing things looking ahead in the future so that we can fund those accounts to address our needs. And I put this slide up here because I want to talk just for a moment for how we're going to address our service needs. And I know that especially in the time when we're talking about taxes, there is this desire to immediately go in and start cutting our budget and services. And I caution this council and I caution this community about rushing to do that. Because part of my job as a city manager is to provide not only the experience that I've had in government, but the perspective, in particular, my time in this city. And I can tell you that if we proceed in haste to remove services, to eliminate in mass a variety of employees, this council chamber will be filled. And members of the public will come up to that podium and they will tell us all of the ills and parade of terribles that will happen if that service or program goes away. And most importantly, they will tell you, City Council, that you do not have to make this cut today. And they would not be wrong. We have the money to provide the services today. And what happens when you don't invest in the community and engage the community and get them involved, there is no ownership in the cuts that staff or the council proposes to take action on. And the result is gridlock because those cuts don't occur. So what I am suggesting is that as we move forward into the adoption of the 25 budget, we begin to kind of build the structure of evaluating our services. And we have done this in the past, in 2018, through Resource X and priority-based budgeting, where we went program by program, starting with staff and then engaging the community to evaluate those programs and that impact the community in the most beneficial way. From that, we engage the community, we inform the community, they are invested in the process, and that takes time. And so what I am foreshadowing to this council, what I'm foreshadowing to this community, that when we adopt the budget in 2025, we will take the weeks of July off, and then we will come into August of 2025, and we will begin a 2-year process to do a comprehensive review of our services so that we can further reduce the programs and services that we have once offered that we will no longer be able to offer into the future, and that is with the passage of the tax measures that are before the voters right now. That happens regardless. The degree to which that happens will be influenced by the result of the community's desire to invest in itself. Let's talk about that. In the spring, this community was faced with a major cliff. Because we were unwilling to do the difficult things in the past and either cut services or ask people to pay more, we came up at a head where if we didn't take immediate action, we were going to see dramatic change to our community. We spent time engaging our community, going through the survey, asking the community, what are the services and programs that are most dear to you? And as one can imagine, no one wanted to see very much removed from Benicia. And so the community overwhelmingly responded in March by supporting Measure A and Measure B, which was to address the immediate need to maintain those services. But as we've highlighted all along, that only addressed the immediate need. It does not solve the long term. To do that, you need a sustained campaign to broaden our tax base. Why? Because we began this presentation reminding everybody here that we do not have a large retail economy and that the property tax from our homes are not keeping pace. And so that brings us to the questions in this November, where we have the citizens that are looking to put on, and they've already been successful, put on the ballot Measure F, which would generate $4 million as a specific tax to fix our roads and can only be used to fix our roads. We have Measure G, which is a charter city option for our voters with the limited and sole purpose to allow our voters to implement a real property transfer tax, which is Measure A, which would generate $850,000. Now let's talk a little bit about how we piece things together. You cannot solve a 5-year forecast that projects deficit. You cannot solve a $225 million deferred maintenance bill with a single solution. Big problems require multiple solutions, and that is what we are putting forward for our residents to consider. What you see here is what Benicia roads will look like in 15 years if we continue to invest the money that we only have for roads, which is about $1 million. Our pavement condition index will deteriorate to a score of 32. We are currently at 54. However, if we invest $5.5 million over the next 15 years, we will return to where we were in 1999 with a pavement condition index of 72. And you can easily see, even with the small view on this monitor, the contrast between one map to the next and how much green is in the map that you're looking at now. There's a point with that dollar amount. I said that we only received $1 million from current sources for roads. Measure F will generate $4 million. We're projecting $5.5 million is needed to invest for our roads. Big problems require multiple solutions. Measure G, which is a general purpose tax, staff is putting forward and will put forward resolutions for the council to invest those dollars for infrastructure and existing essential services of the city.
I think you mean Measure H.
I'm sorry, Measure H. Thank you. A lot of initials out there. The point is that we have a variety of solutions to tackle these issues. And we're not done. For more than 20 years, Councilmember Campbell has been reminding and encouraging this community to address our broken landscape and lighting districts, for which we have 5. We have about 10,000 homes in Benicia, about 4,800 are covered by the landscape and lighting district. And in the infinite wisdom and the people that put forward those measures back in the 1970s and 1980s, there is no escalator. So when you bought your home in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, whatever you were paying then, you are paying now. And I can assure you that the cost to maintain that infrastructure is far different today than it was in the 1980s. We will finally address that by bringing forward for the voters to consider through a Prop 218 process. And for those that are following along, it's not like what we do in November when we go to the ballot box. You get something in the mail, much like you would for our water rates. The difference is we have to receive an affirmative vote to put forward a new fee for our landscape and lighting district. But that will happen in 2025. And then finally, in 2026, we will, after 23 3 years, update and modernize our business license tax. And that will conclude the process beginning this year and ending in 26 about local investment. And then the reason it is last is because the efforts that we are taking now to streamline and facilitate smart growth will take time. The work that we are doing today, the work that was done in 2022 to facilitate the Eastern Gateway, and all the work that this council has done to improve and streamline development will not bear fruit until likely the 2030s. But the work that we do today will set us up for success in the 2030s. We need to do all of that simultaneously to secure our prosperity. And so that is the work and path that we are on. It's comprehensive. It is not just taxes. It is cutting costs. It's saying yes to smart development. And if we do all three, we will achieve a point where we can start chipping away at our infrastructure and preserving the services and programs that are most important to this community. Engagement is very important in Benicia, and to that end, we are spending a lot of time trying to inform, get feedback from our community. I have, for the last month, been doing Mondays with Mario to complement my Tuesday morning coffees. We have upcoming public works events with Sit on a Steamroller at the First Street Green by Farmers Market this Thursday. On Saturday at City Park, it's going to be a road warrior where we are encouraging members of our community to come out and see how road work is done. It is the single biggest issue in Benicia, and we, as a city staff, feel it's important to engage our community and let them be involved in the process, understand the intricacies of fixing a road and why one road gets fixed over another, and have an opportunity to speak to our engineers and our staff and the people that do that work on a daily basis. Then we'll also have, later in the month, our resiliency plan update at our community center to highlight much of what we've discussed tonight. That is the path that we've been working on for the last 18 months. That is the path that we will be doing for the next 5 years. And that is all-encompassing when we talk about believing in Benicia.